The Georgia Bulldogs are going to go down as one of the greatest college football teams we've ever seen. They will go undefeated the entire season. They will not even have an opponent get within single digits of them right now. Great on offense, great on defense, great on special teams. They will absolutely be better than last year's team. They will not be touched all season long. Now, those are not my words. That was not a quote from me. That was a quote from Peter Burns, who works at the SEC Network, a guy who's been doing this a long time. He knows the SEC and the conference as well as anyone out there. And that's what he said about this year's Georgia team after 3 weeks. Yes, they are clearly the best team in college football right now. They're an absolute buzzsaw. But at some point, when does the rat poison get too much? We said all offseason the defense won't be as good. Now, it's still not as talented as it was last year, but they've given up basically 3 points in the last 3 games. I'm not going to count the touchdown they gave up with the fourth stringers with less than a minute to go against South Carolina. That was basically a shutout. The number one defense is playing as well as any defense in the country. The offense is clicking. Special teams, I would not say is elite. They're not playing to the standard that I think Kirby Smart wants them to, and he talked about that in his Tuesday postgame presser. But we're starting to see this Georgia team be the team that Kirby Smart envisioned when he got to Georgia, and he said, this is how I want to build my team. Physicality, composure, discipline, toughness. That's what he's instilled in this team, and I wrote about that today. When that happens, you get a team that strikes fear into its opponents. That's what he said their goal was. He said, we want to strike fear into every opponent in every aspect of the game. And when you have a team like this, built with former 5 stars, former 4 stars all over the place, former 3 stars who are playing like 5 stars, walk-ons who are playing like all SEC players right now, you get a team that does strike fear, and a team that some in the media think, again, could go down as one of the greatest college football teams we've ever seen. That's a big quote right there. That is a ton of rat poison. I know Kirby Smart isn't listening to any of that, and he basically told, us, the media, yesterday, he said, I don't want our players to really read this, but that's not what we say at practice. He said, we want to get better every day. We want to go out and compete. Practice means a ton to this team and Kirby Smart, and practice means a good bit to every team, right? But I'm not sure other programs, actually, I know for a fact that other programs don't preach toughness, physicality, composure, discipline in practice the way Kirby Smart does. He wants perfect practices, and he knows that they've been very, very good this year through the first 3 games. Everyone knows that, but he knows that tougher teams are coming up on the schedule. Now, it's a little down the road because they're going to absolutely murder Kent State and Auburn. Auburn wants no part of this Georgia team. They're going to wave the white flag before halftime. It's going to be an absolute bloodbath. They're afraid of Georgia. Auburn's scared, and Vanderbilt's scared, and Kent State is scared. Florida should be scared. Florida is going to get throttled by this Georgia team if they continue to improve over the next several weeks. They're already the best team in the country. Florida has no quarterback. They have a struggling offense. They're not as talented. They're not as deep. Georgia's going to embarrass them in Jacksonville. Georgia might get at least 2 coaches fired. Brian Harsin, when they lose to Georgia by 30, 40 points, he might be gone in the middle of the season. Jeff Collins, if he's still in Atlanta, still coaching at Georgia Tech come Thanksgiving, his last game will be against Georgia when they lose by 50-plus points. Listen, if you go back and just look at the scores, yes, this quote that Peter Burns gave could be right. I mean, they beat the number 11 Oregon Ducks, who was a good team. I mean, they beat BYU, who's supposed to be a top 15 team, I think. I think that was what they were ranked when they got throttled by Oregon. Oregon lost by 46 points to Georgia. Just looking back at that score, I'm thinking, man, that was crazy. South Carolina, Shane Beamer, if they could have, they would have left that game at halftime and said, you know what, we're done. We don't want to play a second half. I can't imagine what that halftime locker room was like. Those Gamecocks telling Coach Beamer, hey, do we really have to go back out there? Do we really have to play Georgia for another 2 quarters? They were scared. And Kent State knows what they're getting into. It has to be a tough week for Kent State. again, Auburn wants no part of this team. Most teams don't. I think Kentucky and Tennessee are the only teams who still think they might have a shot against this Georgia team, and maybe they do. This is probably the best Tennessee team we've seen in a long, long time. They can score. I think Hendon Hooker is a guy climbing up Heisman draft boards. Crazy to say, even though we're just week 3, but he's a guy who can stretch the field, and Tennessee can put up points. Kentucky has a strong team. We'll continue to see how good they are. Not sure they're as good as what people thought going into the season, but I think Tennessee might be legit. But if they're playing that game at night, Tennessee has no chance of beating Georgia at night. They have zero chance. Even if it's at 3:30, that's probably going to be the biggest home game of the season. If this game were in Knoxville, maybe Tennessee gives them a game. It's in Athens, and I think the SEC East is going to come down to that game. There's no way Georgia loses that game, and they, like Peter said, they probably are going to beat every team on the regular season schedule by more than 10 points. I think I would agree with that statement. This team will not be touched all season long. Regular season, yeah, he's probably right about that too. Looks like they'll play Alabama in the SEC title game again. Alabama is obviously a team that can be beaten. They probably should have lost to Texas if they didn't get the calls go their way. Or, I mean, I hate to be the injury guy, but Quinn Ewers leaving that game was a big deal. Does Texas beat Alabama with a full Quinn Ewers? Possibly, but at the end of the day, you still have to block the guys, and you still have to not let the defenders hit your quarterback and possibly take them out of the game like that happened. So Alabama is beatable. We've seen it. Georgia is playing better than them. And if you ask around the country, a lot of insiders who cover college football, spoke with them, they all agree that it's Georgia's number one. There is a big gap. Then Alabama, then Ohio State, then Michigan, then Clemson, so on and so on. But a lot of hot takes going around the country right now, a lot of rat poison. When does it stop? When is it too much? Does Georgia have to face adversity to get this rat poison to kind of slow down a little bit? Is any team going to give Georgia adversity? Is this a team that needs adversity like last year to accomplish all the goals that they want? Georgia ran through the regular season schedule last year, hit some adversity against Alabama in the loss in the SEC title game. If you ask Kirby Smart and the team, they'll probably say, hey, we needed that a little bit. That was a wake-up call. And you saw what they did the next several weeks leading up to the Michigan game, where they just took them to the woodshed, just an absolute beating they gave the Wolverines. And then they beat Alabama and, of course, in the national championship game. Does this team need that type of game? Do they need a close game in the regular season to step up their game even more? Or is that happening in practice? I think it's happening in practice because, again, we've talked about this a lot. If you ask the players, they'll tell you practices are tougher than the games. And when that happens, you are building a machine. You've got something clicking, something that each and every week you can depend on. And that's Georgia just whipping the crap out of everyone they play. Offense, defense, and even special teams, a unit that has not been outstanding, I would say. Kirby wants them to. He basically touched on that a little bit. He said, we want to take every punt return, kick return for a score. We've got to create some separation there for, the returners to be able to do that. But that's their goal. They're not trying to fair catch it every time. They want to be aggressive. And he wants fast starts, and that's what they've got. And it's important to him to get those backups in. We've talked about this as well. Carson Beck has seen a good amount of time early in the season so far, and it's going to help him next year when I think he does take over this team. And when you're beating these teams' brains in and the game is over at halftime, we saw what happens last year. You get guys into the game who are going to help you and possibly start next year. He said, is Jamon Dumas-Johnson the player he is this year? If he doesn't get those reps last year at the end of games when the game is over already and he gets to come in, get some experience. Experience is key, and you're not going to get better as a player unless you get out there and play. You can do everything right in practice and learn, but if you're not out there getting experience, you're not going to get better. So the fact that they are beating these teams so bad that third and fourth stringers, even those second stringers who need that experience, get to come in and play, in the third quarter, sometimes the second quarter, it means a lot. And it means that the depth you have is getting better and better and better, which makes the team better and better and better. So at the end of the day, you're going to see a lot of rat poison. Peter Burns gave it this week. Is he right? Is Georgia going to go down as one of the best teams of all time? Is anyone going to give them a game in the regular season? I'm not so sure. Maybe we see something at the end of the year, but if you're a Georgia fan, enjoy this season. Enjoy Brock Bowers, enjoy Stetson Bennett, and enjoy beating down teams like South Carolina and Florida and Missouri and Auburn. Enjoy them beating these teams to a pulp in the first 2 quarters. This is a special time in Georgia football history. This is the golden age, the golden era, whatever you want to call it, and we are happy to provide content throughout it. So we really appreciate y'all watching these videos. Leave a comment in the comment section if Peter Burns is crazy. Is he out of line? We love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching this video. As always, stay tuned to the next one coming up right now, and I will see you over on Dog Post.